There's no such thing as a must-pull unit in Honkai Star Rail. Even in real life, there are very few things that are must-do. Eating, sleeping, drinking water. These are just a few things, but you can generally go about your life doing and living how you want within reason. My point is that the idea that there's a fixed solution, one character to save your account, is a lot of it just wishful thinking, and a lot of it is mostly just people feeding the fantasy, giving supply where there is demand. But it's not like there's zero truth to it. If you look at a unit like Firefly in today's meta, it's hard to say that she provides less value than other limited 5 stars. In fact, she probably provides the most value as a single unit, even with a free-to-play light cone. Same goes for Acheron, and then before that, Jingliu. There have always been characters that people look to as the highest value. But pulling those units alone won't necessarily fix all your problems. They might fix the problems that you're facing right now with the current enemies, the current stages, the current difficulty you're at. But as you progress or as the game changes, the whole landscape changes, then it becomes much more important to build not just characters, but your account. Because this is something that I wish was talked about more. Honkai Star Rail, as we all know it, is a combat turn-based game, but at its core, it is more of a strategy, planning, resource investment game that really deserves to be looked at from both a micro and a macro scale. So in this one, instead of telling you what the must-pull units are, which you can easily get from tier lists and everyone else talking about that, I'll talk you through my personal experience building my account and my thought process behind making certain decisions to show you the winning strategy. And if you learn something from this video, great. Okay, so I made this visual representation. Seele and Jing were the first 2 banners to ever touch this game. And I skipped both of them, which in hindsight was a great thing to do. But at the time, it's a very, very tough decision to make meta-wise. But it wasn't that tough for me. For one very simple reason. I just didn't like the characters that much. Not that I hate them, it's just I thought that there were future characters that's going to come up that I would like more. I don't especially want to spend my income because I know the money is going to start coming slower in the future because at the start of the game, you get a lot of pulls. I don't want to spend that on characters that potentially 1 or 2 months down the line, I would replace with a newer main damage dealer. And no, this is not because of dreams or seeing in the future or anything like that. I genuinely just wanted to use my 4 stars and give myself the flexibility from starting the game to branch off in whatever direction I wanted to in the future when we get more knowledge on that. In terms of clearing content, not pulling Seele or Jing did come with some challenges, especially since my first limited character was, well, not exactly the best DPS or the best sustain or support in the game. I was doing okay because due to the lack of strong supports that would be released later on, like Sparkle and Ruan Mei, we really didn't have that many options aside from like Tingyun and Pella to buff up our main DPSs. And I don't think I had Pella for a good while as well, since she's not a guaranteed character. So honestly, at the start of the game, getting strong individual units was a high priority if you wanted to clear content then and there, because the only way without strong supports to do big damage is to have strong damage dealers. Yes, Bronya was an option, but she's not guaranteed. Now I was coming with a mindset of being more selective with my characters that I picked, because coming from Genshin Impact, I realized after playing for 2 or 3 years that you get to a point where they release so many damage dealers, and a lot of these damage dealers as a player you would like as well, that you would have a lot more damage dealers than you can realistically use. And that also means that because they're releasing so many damage dealers, they're releasing less supports. So generally supports tend to outlast damage dealers because lack of competition, etc, etc. So when I saw Silverwolf, I immediately was hooked, because not only did she let you implant weaknesses, which also let your other carries that weren't necessarily Seele or Jing kind of help match enemy element and have an easier time. Then obviously if you had Seele and Jing they will also benefit them as well. But as a way to not fully invest in a DPS that I might not like using in the future, investing in a support like Silverwolf seemed like a much safer option. Also, her universal defense down seemed like something that would scale well into the future, because even if she ever gets power crept in the sense of a character just having straight up better multipliers than her, the defense down is just such a universal thing. Because every damage that your allies do can benefit from defense down. I thought Silverwolf was just a very solid option to pick up. And also Huo Huo encouraged us with the free event light cone, so that was great. I'm still using Silverwolf to this day. She kind of had a bit of dip in usage until Acheron revived her, and then now she's one of the most invaluable supports because of Acheron being so strong. It did cost me 150 pulls to get her though, but at the end of the day, I would say it's worth it. Same story for Luocha. Super expensive to get, lost my 50-50s on both, went to a hard pity on both. But Luocha at the time, as someone who didn't have Bailu, didn't have Japart, keep in mind Lynx wasn't out yet, I really felt the boost of having Luocha, because that means I don't have to run March 7th or Fire MC on my other team in Memory of Chaos. And at this time, I was trying to clear Memory of Chaos. In fact, I was trying to clear back in 1.0. Now we're at version 1.1, and I was moving up to floor 7, floor 8, and enemies were really starting to hurt. A lot of Luocha pullers are now looking back on Luocha and regretting it, saying that Gallagher power crap him and stuff like that. And sure, to a large extent, for what it is, Gallagher keeps your team alive, but also does additional damage on top of that, which makes him really good. A lot of enemies now are also fire weak. But Luocha really carried my account pretty much for months and months up until recently. And even now, he still carries me hard in Divergent Universe and the harder game modes. Luocha is just a really comfortable unit, and still is a comfortable unit to have as well, because he is someone that doesn't require skill points and in fact generates skill points for you. Anyway, moving on to Blade, he was a skip for me because my main DPS at the time was Dan Heng. And you know a character is not outputting crazy damage when there's less clickbait of a character being OP than usual. Actually, no, I take that back. There was, but him being OP was in the form of him not ever dying. Remember, if you were playing then, how that was a big selling point? The fact that Blade could build a lot of HP and not die. Well, how times have changed, right? Because back then, if you didn't pull Luocha, you would have very limited sustain options. Maybe a Japart, maybe a Bailu, if you were lucky, which was also considered unlucky at the time because people wanted things like just Bronya, I guess, maybe Yanqing at the really early days. Anyway, Blade wasn't outputting crazy damage, and I knew this sustain problem would be a short-term thing as well, because they are going to inevitably release more sustain units, and a character being tanky isn't really a amazing thing for pushing DPS check endgame content. But the main thing was, Dan Heng and him have the same win weakness, so I didn't feel it was necessary. Also, even back then, I could tell his damage without his signature light cone, even though people were saying it's good, it's fine, it's mega cope. We have seen how well that has aged. And this is not me hating or anything, I wish he was good, but the fact that we haven't got a support that is especially good for him up till today is just quite unfortunate. And then we have Kafka. Okay, looking back, Kafka is a unit I wish I did pull. However, I'm also glad I didn't. Let me explain that. The reason I wish I did pull her is because she really is the creator of a whole archetype. Before Kafka, the only character to play a DOT team with was Sampo. So it wasn't really an archetype, but just a sample thing. I guess, Serval applied shock, Hook applied burn and stuff like that, but we don't really count those, right? We didn't even have Luca, which literally came with Kafka on her banner. So at this point, my account didn't have a main DPS, but getting Kafka would actually significantly boost my account's damage and my damaging capabilities, because that's just how good of a unit she is. And with time, as we've seen, Black Swan would come out, stuff like Ruan Mei, Huo Huo would come out, which are premium options to replace her current supports. And she will scale well into future updates as well. Not the craziest, but she's always a solid option. DOT teams are always a solid option, depending on how much you invest into them. And also keep in mind, pulling Kafka doesn't just end there. It also means pulling Ruan Mei, pulling Black Swan, pulling Huo Huo if you want the best setup. I know you can run her without that, but as someone who likes vertically investing into his account, I would have felt the need to go for those characters and not really go into hypercarries like I've decided at this point. Speaking of which, Imbibitor Lunae is the definition of a hypercarry. He requires so much skill points, so much support on him, but in return he'll do a lot of damage. See, the reason I skipped him though is because there's just another unit that's coming out that I really want. Simple as that. I didn't know about the numbers, the kit, whatever. When Imbibitor Lunae was released, everyone was going crazy over him. Insane damage, 0 cycles, 1000% multiplier, yada yada yada. It was hard not to pull. Like, the FOMO was getting to me, the need for power. Because at this point, I've been playing with no limited 5-star DPS for the 4th patch in a row. That's almost 5 months. I was ready to do some damage. But I'd have thought, I waited so long, I may as well wait a bit more. And so I did. Because it's generally easy to skip limited DPSs, especially ones that just output raw damage. He didn't have any unique mechanic or gimmick like Kafka. He didn't really create a new genre of playstyle. He didn't do any of those, and so I felt it was safe. But mostly just because I love Jingliu. As we'll see here, because I pulled back to back, Xuan and Jingliu. And if you notice, I went for the money. I went straight for the Eidolons and the superpositions. It's the first time I'm ever doing that. This is where I decided to go full vertical investment as well. And to explain why I got Xuan, I just really love her animations, and dying was still a problem for me in the higher memory of chaoses. Cheeky Huo Huo only released our second free 4-star healer, so I only had Natasha for my second team, and I was really feeling the hurt. I didn't necessarily go for her E1 S1. I got E0 from winning a 50-50. And then the E1 came in a 10 pull because I was feeling gambly, and sometimes you just press that 10 pull button and hope for the best, and 10 pulls, 150-50 again. The S1 also came in 3 pulls. So I know insane luck. Sometimes it happens. I don't think I would have chased E1 S1 if I had bad luck or even average luck. I think I would have done E0 and then made do with the free-to-play Lycon. But hey, I won't say no to it. Now, Jingliu was a character I've been saving for pretty much since the Jing trailer. I'm sure a lot of people did as well. And so she was my first ever 5-star limited DPS. And I had a bunch of Jade saved up, and I thought her E1 was pretty fun because it kind of change the way that you want to play by isolating enemies and stuff. It just felt cool. I know in practicality it's just a damage increase, but it felt cool. It's not just a flat bonus. There are conditions you need to meet for her E1. So I went for it. E1 S1, standard amount of pulls. And she served me well. At this point I was chilling. She was paired with either Luocha or Xuan for one side of MOC, and the other side had to make do with whatever I had left. I would 0 or 1 cycle the side with Jingliu every single time, and the other side would take like 5 or 6 cycles. But hey, all you need to do is clear within 10 cycles, right? So that is fine. So I was making do with just 1 limited DPS for a while. Okay, Topaz is an interesting one because at this point I was building Clara. I've always had a Himeko that was built. So Topaz could really have helped my other team, but I made a somewhat tough decision to not go for her. Because I made it so far with 0 limited main DPSs. And I finally got my first one. I am sure I can wait a while for my second one. It won't be a big problem. I also didn't necessarily want to get into the follow-up attack playstyle. At the time, I didn't really know what it entailed yet. Units like Ratio and Aventurine weren't released too, Robin as well, so I felt like I would have a chance to get her down the line if I wanted to pivot, seeing as reruns were now a thing as well. Huo Huo was a skip for me because I had 2 sustains. I didn't play DOT teams as well, so no need for Huo Huo. Now, Argenti released with Pure Fiction. This is the first time we've got a second rotating endgame mode like Memory of Chaos. Okay, I'm not the biggest Argenti simp, so his design didn't convince me to pull for him. But you know who I was big simps of from day one and even built them very early on, even though they didn't really do much in Memory of Chaos? Herta and Himeko. And man, I was already having a lot of fun in Pure Fiction without Argenti. So it was a no-brainer to skip him, didn't need him looks-wise or account-wise. And at this point, like, I'm showing the reruns that are happening, but spoiler alert, I did not pull a single one of them because I generally don't regret my skips. Like I said earlier, the only one I might regret and might pull in the future is Kafka. But we'll see. And also, before we move on, I want to quickly talk about something with the release of Argenti, Huo Huo really started to release characters that fit what kind of game modes they are introducing at the time. Sure, you can say they've always done that with Memory of Chaos, Cycle Turbulences. They have buffs that favor the current characters. But Argenti was really the first time that they released a game mode and released a character specifically designed for the game mode at the same time in hopes that people pull. I think this is the first time that the characters being released really reflect the quote-unquote meta of the game. And I'll continue to talk about that more as we continue. So Ruan Mei, E1S1. I think she's stunning, I think she's beautiful, but more so than everything, she is a literal jack of all trades, master of everything. When they released her kit, I was stunned. I didn't know how this wouldn't be strong into the future. Because she isn't created for one game mode. Ruan Mei is unconditional. Sure, teams that multiple characters contribute the overall damage benefit more from her. But even in my Jingliu team, at E0, she replaces Pella as well. So like, if that's your lowest point, like the sky's the limit. The fact that she provides so much buffs while also doing a good amount of crowd control and also providing a bit of damage is crazy to me. It's very hard for me to see accounts that wouldn't want Ruan Mei in them. But even then, there are situations where another unit is a better pull than Ruan Mei. She's the closest to a quote-unquote must-pull unit for a new account who has literally 0 characters because it makes it so you can pivot to other characters and stuff. But honestly, if you already have an idea of what you want or you already have some characters to go off, she doesn't necessarily become a must-pull anymore. If you have like a bunch of Harmony units like Sparkle and Robin, and you like characters to actually do the damage, then I would say go for a damage dealer, right? It just depends on what gives you a bigger overall damage increase. Then Ratio and Kafka, that was simple. I did try to pull on Kafka's banner though, and I got unlucky and I knew I needed to save for Sparkle, so I didn't pull. Ratio was free. They want to pull his Light Cone. I was focused on building Jingliu at the time. It's fine. The smart thing to do was to pull Ratio Light Cone so I can have another DPS. But instead, I spent the whole update farming relics for Jingliu just to give her a marginal increase in damage because I like her that much. And there's nothing wrong with that. Just a reminder to have fun. It's crazy how I feel the need to say that nowadays. Then we have Black Swan, skip because I didn't get into DOTs. It's also another reason I was hesitant to go to Pity on the Kafka banner because I know if I got Kafka then I would need Black Swan, which means I wouldn't have enough for Sparkle. And man, Sparkle did I pull. I did pull Sparkle. Sparkle. I don't use her that much nowadays, especially because I don't have E2 Acheron. I use her when I play Qingque and Shui Yi, and maybe in the future when I play Ratio, but that's about it. She's a really good unit though. She's a really good unit. And I don't regret E0S1 because she helps me whenever I play almost any main DPS right now. It's just that I mostly just run Acheron, which we'll get to now. Because she is my second ever limited main DPS 1 year into the game. And I think she's very cool. Still to this day, I don't get tired of her alt animations. She lets me use my Nihility teammates, which I really appreciate. And I chose to pull her because, you know, if you don't have 2 limited DPSs, get 2 limited DPSs. Although it's less straightforward nowadays. Nowadays, I think you probably want as much as possible to fit as many different archetypes as possible. But then again, like, the solution to everything was always like just pull more, right? In the past. That's why like whaling and stuff and having every single unit is generally what you want to do to be able to challenge every content with the best team possible, right? But I think in return, you become less relatable and also it's kind of less fun because resource management game is only fun to me, in my opinion, if you have limited resources, because then it's more of a game and your decisions matter rather than having everything open to you. And that's not me judging. And that's not me condemning whaling. In fact, I think a lot of the unjust and unfair hate that whales just get needlessly is a bit weird. I feel like in 2024, we can stop being salty that whales spend money on the game, even though it doesn't personally offend you or anything. I skipped Aventurine. I have a classic video that I made for it. And I still stand by most things, although it's harder for me to one cycle, one shot, 0 cycle, one tap everything nowadays because I haven't pulled, as you can see down the line, I have not pulled. So it's kind of hard. And in hindsight, it would have been nice to tie me over. But honestly, pulling any one of these new limited 5 stars would have been also nice to help with my damage and tying me over. Like, pulling Robin would make it so that I action advance more and I can kill enemies faster. Help with zero cycles, and if you have zero cycle, you don't need to sustain. Boothill, breaking enemy, and Firefly in this break meta is very, very good. Once again, I skipped Robin. Another video I made because I don't need another harmony, and I was very focused on doing hypercarry builds. Because if we look back, essentially what my account was building towards was hypercarries. There are 3 main archetypes in the game so far before Super Break, and that was follow-up attack teams. That was basically just Jing, Yuan, Topaz, and then now Robin, right? If you had Jing, Yuan, Topaz, you would most likely pull Robin. Everyone got a free ratio at the time. DOT teams, which are Kafka, Ruan Mei, Black Swan, or hypercarry teams, which is literally every other character, and the supports and sustains are interchangeable. But usually there are best support or best sustain for every team archetype. Huo Huo knows this, they consciously do this. And now there's the 4th archetype, which is Super Break, Boothill Firefly. I chose early on that I was going to do hypercarry, and that's what I did. I knew it's going to be expensive keeping up with DOTs and also follow-up attack units because, as we've seen, a character like Black Swan, a character like Topaz usually is limited to the archetype. Okay, I don't think this was exactly conscious. I'm not like the most 5-head giga brain planning ahead down to every detail player out there, but I think I subconsciously chose hypercarries as the thing to focus on. Because when you play hypercarries, you have much more resources, as in Jade, to pull support units. Hypercarry only takes up 1 team slot. There's only 1 character you have to pull for. I only needed to pull for Jingliu. I only needed to pull for Acheron. My other units, Silverwolf, Luocha, Fu Xuan, Ruan Mei, Sparkle, are all units that can be played in other team archetypes. And why that's significant is because I guess I took a gamble. At the start of the game, I assumed, I hoped that I would play the game for a long time. The game seemed promising, and I know I had a history of regularly playing gacha games. So I wanted to see how this would go long term, and I wanted to, quote unquote, set my account up for the future while also not compromising on what I personally enjoy playing, the characters I enjoy playing. That's why I went for hypercarries, where you have more flexibility on choosing which exact hypercarry you want to play as well, while still building your account up from pulling supports. And now I'm at a point where we are finally seeing team archetypes starting to materialize, and we generally have more of a vibe of how these teams are going to play and the future of them. Even new team archetypes like Super Break are being introduced. And at this point, I get to choose which team archetype I step into. And with the characters I have, it's actually quite easy to step into some of them. For example, Super Break, I already have an E1, S1 Ruan Mei, so it's easy to get into Firefly, into Boothill. Follow-up attacks, not so much, but for DOTs, all I need is Kafka and Black Swan. I have Ruan Mei settled. And for DOTs, it's not that easy as well. I only have Ruan Mei. Ruan Mei is a connecting thread here in a lot of these things. Even Jingliu, best team, has Ruan Mei in it. It's crazy. But in the future, I think I might get into DOT because of a future character that's releasing, the Foxian guy, that if you've seen his kit, he applies DOTs to characters while also being a seemingly good Acheron support. So he might be an interesting one for my account, fulfilling both a DOT role, making it so I only have to pull Kafka to get a DOT team going, and also upgrading my Acheron team in a more vertical investment way, like I like doing. So yeah, that pretty much explains it. That's why I didn't pull Boothill, that's why I didn't pull Firefly. I like Firefly, but I don't want to steal everyone's girlfriend, so I'm just gonna sit this one out. Same thing for Jade, being a really good pull in Pure Fiction. I've heard that Himeko, I'm chilling. Jade would have been nice. Not necessarily my favorite character. Another carry, can do without it. I like pulling supports if you can't tell at this point, and we'll see about the future banners. I most likely will make a video about Yuan and the rest of the characters as well. We'll see. The reason I didn't make why I did not pull for the previous ones is because I feel like I'll just be using my points and just talking about why I don't want to get into Super Break, and I thought a video like this would be more comprehensive in sharing that with you, while also providing insight into just the whole idea of team archetypes and just being conscious and choosing what is good for you. Anyway, I hope this video was informative and entertaining, or whatever you got out from it. I stream on Twitch. I don't know why I did a peace sign. I'm not going yet. I stream on Twitch. If you want to hear me yap more every day, pretty much, come say hi. Bye-bye.